Hi everyone. Today we're going to read Chapter 9 of Stuart Little. How are you liking the story so far? I'm really enjoying it. I like the way that the book is written because each chapter is sort of like a short story, and every chapter is a different adventure in Stuart's life. So I really like the way that it's written that way. I was thinking today we could fill out another character web, and this time we'll do Margalo, since she is the newest character that we have been introduced to in the story. So you could pause the video now if you want to get yourself a piece of paper, or you can print this. This worksheet is on Schoology in our ELA folders. And but if you don't have a printer, that's fine. You can just get a piece of paper and draw a circle in the middle. You're going to write Margalo, and then you can just draw your circles around, 4 little circles around. Okay? And that way we can fill it all together at the end of the chapter. Now, chapter 8, we meet Margalo. She's a bird, and she is beautiful, and Stuart is in love, and he thinks she's just the greatest. And he actually ends up saving her life from a Snowbell, that sneaky cat. So he uses his bow and arrow to protect her while she's sleeping. So let's see what other adventures Margalo and Stuart are going to get into. Chapter 9 is called A Narrow Escape. Seriously. Stuart's always narrowly escaping something. Every chapter could be titled A Narrow Escape. Margalo liked it so well at the Littles' house, she decided to stay for a while instead of returning to the open country. She and Stuart became fast friends, and as the days passed, it seemed to Stuart that she grew more and more beautiful. He hoped she would never go away from him. One day, when Stuart had recovered from his bronchitis, he took out his new skates. Oh, remember? In the last chapter, Mr. Little made Stuart a pair of ice skates from paper clips. So he took out his new skates and put on his ski pants and went out to look for an ice pond. He didn't get far. The minute he stepped out into the street, he saw an Irish Terrier. That's a dog. So he had to shimmy up an iron gate and jump into a garbage can where he hid in a bunch of celery. While he was there waiting for the dog to go away, a garbage truck from the Department of Sanitation drove up to the curb, and 2 men picked up the can. Stuart felt himself being hoisted high in the air. He peered over the side and saw that in another instant he and everything in that can would be dumped into the big truck. If I jump now, I'll die, thought Stuart. So he ducked back into the can and waited. The men threw the can with a loud bump into the truck, where another man grabbed it, turned it upside down, and shook everything out. Stuart landed on his head, buried 2 feet in wet, slippery garbage. Yuck. All around him was garbage, smelling strong. Under him, over him, on all 4 sides of him, garbage. Just an enormous world of garbage and trash and smell. It was a messy spot to be in. He had egg on his pants, butter on his hat, gravy on his shirt, orange pulp in his ear, and a banana peel wrapped around his wrist. Still hanging onto his skates, Stuart tried to make his way up to the surface of the garbage, but his footing was bad. He climbed a pile of coffee grounds, but near the top of the grounds, it gave way under him, and he slid down, and he landed in a pool of leftover rice pudding. I bet I'm going to be sick to my stomach before I get out of this, said Stuart. He was anxious to work his way up to the top of the pile because he was afraid of being squashed by the next can of garbage. Maybe it makes sense, right? When at last he did succeed in getting to the surface, tired and smelly, he observed that the truck was not making any more collections, but was rumbling rapidly along. Stuart glanced up at the sun. We're going east, he said to himself. I wonder what that means. So now the truck is driving away from where he just was. Ay. There was no way for him to get out of the truck. The sides were too high. He just had to wait. When the truck arrived at the East River, which borders New York City on the east and which is a rather dirty but useful river, the driver drove out onto the pier, backed up to a garbage scow, and dumped his load. That's like a really big, flat ship that collects the garbage. And there's a picture of it if you can see it. It's like a boat, but it's very wide and flat, and it collects all the garbage. Stuart went crashing and slithering along with everything else and hit his head so hard he fainted. Oh no! Oh gosh, he lay that way for almost an hour. And when he recovered his senses, he looked about him and saw nothing but water. He was being towed out to sea. Well, thought Stuart, this is about the worst thing that could happen to anybody. I guess this will be my last ride in this world. For he knew that the garbage would be towed 20 miles out and then dumped into the Atlantic Ocean. That doesn't really sound very good for the environment, does it? This is a very old book. I don't think that's what we do with garbage anymore. But they used to dump garbage into the ocean, and that's very, 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 very bad. I guess there's nothing I can do about it, he thought hopelessly. I'll just have to sit here bravely and die like a man. I wish I didn't have to die with egg on my pants and butter on my hat and gravy on my shirt and orange pulp in my ear and a banana peel wrapped around me. The thought of death made Stuart sad, and he began to think of his home and of his father and mother and brother George and Margalo and Snowbell and how he loved all of them, well, all but Snowbell. And he thought of what a pleasant place his home was, especially in the early morning with the light just coming in through the curtains and the household waking. The tears came into his eyes when he realized he would never see them again. He was still sobbing when a small voice from behind him whispered, "Stuart!" He looked around through his tears, and there, sitting on a Brussels sprout, was Margalo. "Margalo!" cried Stuart. "How did you get here?" "Well," said the bird, "I was looking out the window this morning when you left home, and I happened to see you get dumped into the garbage truck. So I flew out the window and followed the truck, thinking you might need help." "I've never been so glad to see anybody in all my life," said Stuart. "But how are you going to help me?" "I think if you hang on to my feet," said Margalo, "I can fly ashore with you. It's worth trying anyway. How much do you weigh?" 3.5 ounces, said Stuart. "With your clothes on?" asked Margalo. "Certainly," replied Stuart modestly. Like he's not going to take his clothes off so that she can rescue him. "Then I believe I can carry you all right." "Suppose I get dizzy," said Stuart. "Don't look down," replied Margalo. "Then you won't get dizzy." "Suppose I get sick to my stomach?" "You'll just have to be sick," the bird replied. "Anything is better than death." "Yes, that's true," Stuart agreed. "Hang on then, we may as well get started." Stuart tucked his skates into his shirt, stepped softly onto a piece of lettuce, and took a firm grip on Margalo's ankles. "All ready!" he cried. With a flutter of wings, Margalo rose into the sky, carrying Stuart along, and together they flew out over the ocean and headed toward home. "Phew!" said Margalo when they were high in the air. "You smell awful, Stuart." "I know I do," he replied gloomily. "I hope it isn't making you feel bad." "I can hardly breathe," she answered, "and my heart is pounding in my chest. Isn't there something you could drop to make yourself lighter?" "Well, I could drop these ice skates," said Stuart. "Goodness me!" the little bird cried. "I didn't know you had skates hidden in your shirt. Toss those heavy skates away quickly, or we will both fall down into the ocean and perish." Okay, remember they're made out of paper clips, so they're really not that heavy. But to a small bird and a small mouse, they must be heavy. So Stuart threw his skates away and watched them fall down, down till they disappeared. Well, it's kind of sad. He didn't even get to use the skates that his dad made him. What a bummer. "That's better," said Margalo. "Now we're all right. I can see the towers and chimneys of New York." 15 minutes later, in they flew through the open window of the Littles' living room and landed on the Boston Fern. Mrs. Little, who had left the window up when she missed Margalo, was glad to see them back, for she was beginning to worry. She does like to worry, that Mrs. Little. When she heard what had happened and how near she had come to losing her son, She took Stuart in her hand, and even though his clothes smelled nasty, she kissed him. Then she sent him upstairs to take a bath, and sent George out to take Stuart's clothes to the cleaner. "What was it like out there in the Atlantic Ocean?" asked Mr. Little, who had never been very far from home. So Stuart and Margalo told all about the ocean, and the gray waves curling with white crests, and the seagulls in the sky, and the channel buoys, and the ships, and the wind making a sound in your ears. Mr. Little sighed and said someday he hoped to get away from business long enough to see all those fine things. Everyone thanked Margalo for saving Stuart's life, and at supper time, Mrs. Little gave her a tiny cake with some seeds sprinkled on top. Here's a picture of Margalo and her little cake. So everything worked out all right in the end. Thank goodness for Margalo. They just keep saving each other, don't they? Well, let's get our character web papers out. Okay, now we've got Margalo's name in the middle. What are some things that we could say about Margalo? What are some characteristics of her? Let's start with something easy. She's what kind of animal? She is a bird. So we can write bird in one of these circles. Okay. What else could we say about her? Stuart thinks she's beautiful. Should we write down that she's beautiful? She's beautiful. She seems very kind, doesn't she? I'm going to write down kind. She does save Stuart's life, after all. She's kind. And you know what else we could write is we could write where she's from. She's from the country. That's another thing we could write down. She's not a city bird, but she ended up in the city. She's from the country. If there are other characteristics that you can think of that you want to add, or in facts about Margalo that you want to add, you could always add another circle. You know, you could add more than 4 circles. You could add a circle up here or down here, or you could write something different in the circles. See how many different things you can think of. And I'll see you next time for Chapter 10. Bye.